Good afternoon and welcome to the second talk and theme of this retreat, short retreat, is working with negativity. And I'm happy to respond to questions about this once we get going here. Lots of negativity comes up in our minds, sometimes as we sit, comes up in our relationships, comes up all over the place, on the television and so on. Lots of negativity. So I'd like to say, as I think I've already said to some extent, if you do anything with it, it just gets fueled. You push on it, it fights back. If you try to explain it or justify it or work with it in any way that adds to it or detracts from it or meddles with it at all, it gets fueled, and that's how it's fueled, including negativity that we just look away from or distract ourselves. And it's extremely complicated. It's broken down into passion, aggression, ignorance, but it's very, very complicated. The thought process, the thinking process can do something in that area. We have philosophy, we have psychology, we have all of the different ways of thinking about this and various aspects of religious situation. Lots of books have been written. And people, we get credentials on what is sometimes might get a credential in some area of that, which doesn't work so well. We might get a whole education in a field that is incomplete and and misunderstands how that whole situation works, including religious spiritual path. There's lots of spiritual paths that are not up here to say who's right and who's wrong. I'm not going to do that. I'm just saying, look closely at anything you're taught or told by anyone. Always look at everything, and in particular, this person, this talk. You should question it. You should question everything as thoroughly and completely as you can. So the kind of negativity that we quite often run into is negativity in relationships, in our mate, in our employer, in our coworkers, and just in people in general. Like Jean-Paul Sartre once said, hell is other people. And he had a point. So in order to really meet everything where it's at, including the negativity, excuse me, it seems to be necessary to do a lot of sitting meditation. This is what we do here. And I'm very biased in this area. It looks like, I'm not saying there isn't some way where things can't be figured out or sorted out or shuffled around. There's all kinds of disciplines, everything from the Enneagram to astrology and numerology and tarot cards. And, we could just go on with that. There's all over the place, all kinds of things. And they have a little bit of truth to them. They have sometimes enough there to magnetize you right in them, or they'll just suck up the rest of your spare time. I know somebody who's very much into Enneagrams. They're an expert in it. They know everything about it. Enneagrams are fascinating. But they give you the illusion of understanding because they're so conceptual and the structure is such that it does really track down the nature of our self-centeredness, our style, our ego, our propensity to work on things through analysis or through intuition or through trying to express, or rather maybe not trying to express, but maybe through trying to teach, and through just so many ways. It's just so many. And when it comes to negativity, we quite often will try to apply something we've learned, some way of working with it. And I'm about to present to you, like we were talking about earlier today, a way of doing this that is very simple. It's been around for many centuries, and it is called awareness. Awareness. This arises in awareness. It's there, it's gone, it's experiential. That which sees that is not an experience. I'll say it again. That which hears that sound is not an experience. But what happens is the identity wants to laminate itself to something. It wants to get a credential or get some kind of reference point for it. It's called ego, basically Western word for it. So it seems to be a very powerful way of working with this is to, as I say quite often, meet it where it's at. And quite often we have to meet it where we think it's at over and over and over again until we eventually maybe have a breakthrough where we start to see beyond our preconceptions into the actual situation itself, which can be startling to ego. It can be startling. Just the experience of it is startling. Seems to be a need to get some kind of feedback from something to know if we're doing something correctly or incorrectly. There's something to this, of course. It's a relative construct. The world shows up as relative truth, plus and minus, up and down, back and forth, night and day, here and absent. It's just so much all over the place that we tend to cling to that. We tend to use that as a way of determining what's actually happening, what has value, what doesn't have value, what we should pursue, what we shouldn't pursue. Excuse me. And quite often when negativity shows up, the very first thing that we want to do is go at it with more negativity or warfare. If somebody comes in that is warlike, we want to the urges or the impulses is to go to war. And we can also come up with explanations about why we shouldn't go to war, which is a little suspicious also. You have to be very careful about your politics, about what you jump to, because there's so damn much proof of your preconceptions. Be very careful about that. When I say be careful, I'm not saying tippy-toe, eggshells. I'm not talking about that kind of careful. I'm talking about just watch what it is. Watch, nothing lasts. What appears to last is something that's rejected, that lasts. Something that's accepted, that lasts. Something that's ignored, that lasts. Maybe not for very long, but has a kind of duration based on confusion, based on assumptions that we are separate and that we somehow have some kind of a say-so about things. To paraphrase Longchenpa, the 14th century Tibetan sage, and this is a paraphrase, but it's pretty close. There's nothing to fix. Everything's already perfect. If you don't see that, you will fight with your world, with your interior world, with the outside world. You'll accept, condemn, praise, criticize. You'll constantly be caught in Indra's net, or the just monstrous situation we call relative truth of life and death and wars and peace, and just on and on and on. So this is your opportunity to train your mind to see fundamentally what is true. If you see what's fundamentally true, it doesn't mean you won't continue to act in a relative way. It could become even more relative, because you'd be operating out of awareness, not out of positionality or some kind of conceptual construct. It is a path of transcendence, a path to where we actually transcend the very situation that this body, speech, and mind is appearing in. Yes, sir.
You said that we should question everything. How do we question everything in such a way that we go deeper into it and not project our existing ideas onto it?
You have an awareness practice that is so strong that the awareness goes with you, that you don't go into something looking for handles and levers and buttons and offs and on switches. You go into it in a sense of, I don't know. You might even say, I don't know. But you go into it with awareness. Awareness doesn't belong to anyone.
What do you do with skepticism or conviction when you're presented with something?
Don't believe it. Don't disbelieve it.
Is there a way to ask questions in the midst of either one of those arising?
Sure.
How would you do that?
Just ask. You're asking now.
Sometimes it's hard if the skepticism or the conviction is very strong.
Yeah.
That I really want to believe it, I really want to disbelieve it.
Yes.
To ask the question that helps you see it more clearly. So
Perhaps it helps you see it more clearly. Am I lost or are you?
Yeah.
Who gets lost?
Nobody gets lost.
Who wins? Who loses?
Nobody.
Nobody. Then why have any struggle at all? Why be a monk? Don't know. Save all beings. There's a whole lot of people that are struggling. Save all beings. That's very, very difficult to do because you, in your situation, if you are realized, there's much to do. But if you're receive, take, observe, a vow to save all beings, you've got a whole lot of work to do. More?
Is there a way to create space in the midst of that passion or that aggression?
Yeah, it's don't do anything with the passion. Don't do anything with the aggression. Just look at it. If you do anything with it, it's just, you might as well be putting a disguise on it. It's just like it's actually what it actually is rising in space. The awareness itself is like space, like a sky. Things appear in the sky and they go away. They leave no trace in the sky, unless it's a jet, which of course temporary jet trail. More?
No, thank you.
Yes.
What does save all beings mean?
Be with all things. Don't object to anything anymore. Stop it. Just don't object to anything. Notice when something arises how much you really disagree with it and don't like it. And you notice your mind starting going, that shouldn't be going on. Follow me? So start with your own mind. Anything that arises in your mind, don't agree with it or accept it. Don't disagree with it or get rid of it. And don't shut down, look away from it, or distract yourself into some other world, some other situation. More?
Is that what that vow
Yes.
really means?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not going out and saying, boy, that guy really needs my help.
No, that's a misunderstanding of the spiritual path. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, you may not budge at all. Somebody else might have to go and rescue the person, child in the street playing with glass or whatever. But probably not, because if you see it, that's an obvious situation where you don't need permission to do that. Your own understanding gives you permission to save that child. But if somebody is this is why you have to meet it with awareness. If you meet it with concepts, the concepts will cloud your vision of what is appropriate and what is completely meddling. Don't meddle. You're not helping anyone who is twisting around in space and having difficulty with their passion, aggression, and ignorance. The very best thing you could probably do, I just say probably, because this is not a formula for working with it. The formula for working with it is be aware and strengthen that awareness so that so you have no doubts. If you have the slightest doubt about what's happening, this is ego. On the other hand, if you have doubts and then you get rid of that, that's also ego. What? Did I contradict myself? No, I didn't.
Why is that ego?
Because it's something you're trying to get rid of.
Aggression.
A form of that, yeah. So you have to really do it with awareness. You can't, everything else is a second-class citizen. Everything else can get some, maybe help a little bit. Maybe, you know, we're not saying taking anything away from someone who's functioning like, you know, a therapist or a nurse, or we're not saying that you're not helping, which of course we need all kinds of help like that, but be very careful about stepping into territory based on your preconceptions of what someone needs when you've not, you know, as has been said by the Pawnee, walking in their moccasins. Or was that the Cherokee? Yes.
How does this process of questions and answers and deep penetration of concepts help our awareness practice?
Say more.
Pardon me?
Say more.
Say more.
Elaborate what you're saying. You mean the study we do with the concepts of passion,
not
aggression?
the study, but the questioning and I don't see for myself I mean, when we're practicing when we're in our awareness practice, we're not we're working with concepts, we're watching ourselves. We're working with concepts. It's not to sit and contemplate.
Yeah.
So I'm just not clear as to how the concepts sharpen.
What concept?
Let's say the concept of even the concept of saving all beings.
Okay.
The idea of saving all beings.
So what's the question? Give me a direct question. If you
How does working with that concept sharpen our awareness?
Well, what sharpens your awareness is sitting on the floor looking at a wall until you're absolutely bored to death. So that's what's going to sharpen your awareness. Working with a concept, what it does is it takes the tendency of the mind, of the ego mind, the self-centered mind, which is always looking for validation or always looking to analyze. It takes that mind and plugs it into a particular concept that doesn't allow a lot of breathing room for ego. Ego starts to suffocate when it starts to think of saving all beings in the way that I'm talking about.
Would you say the conceptual framework that we work in then is a kind of discipline for the spinning mind that interjects its ego?
This is why at the Sokukoji we're studying Dogen Zenji, we're studying Dan Lusthouse, which is an absolute pain in the butt to study for some people. Some people love this real intense conceptual stuff. It doesn't matter. That study is about not only about the teachings, but it's also about sangha, being together with other people who are meditating and very sincere, working very diligently with their minds, and then coming together and taking the concepts that support, that explain the teaching of no separation, the teaching of the Buddha, that everything is dependently arisen, to actually bring concepts and discuss that rather than just read the book by yourself and say, well, read that one. What's next? Well, read that one with no discussion. So the discussion about it seems to be, it actually shows up, if you do it enough, will show up for you the way in which you don't understand. That's one of the most powerful awarenesses you can have, not the way you understand. I don't care whether you understand anything. I just want you to awaken. I want you to wake up. I want everyone here to wake up. If you wake up, there's nothing to do. Yes.
So if I sharpen my awareness, then it may be when I'm living my life, it may be easier for me to see passion, see aggression, because I'm more aware. But how do I see ignorance in that situation?
You can't see ignorance. The very nature of ignorance is you can't see it.
But then what? It feels hopeless.
Very good. Would you try to grasp for hope? It is hopeless. From the point of view of ego, it is hopeless. Ego is not going to win in this situation. So if ego is trying to pack its bags and go into enlightenment with your awareness, it's not going to happen. It's going to have to stay home.
So there's this ignorance.
Yes.
And what way is there into becoming aware of that?
Just continue to practice and continue to look at it and don't make up stuff. Don't paint things on the wall of ignorance. Must be this, maybe it's that. If it isn't this, maybe this would work. How about a circle? Circles are really nice. Maybe it's like Enso practice, the endless circle of eternity. I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm saying when you see what you think is ignorance, look close.
I don't know how to see what I think is ignorance.
You keep practicing. More? Okay.
That concept of saving all beings, how would it look if I was dealing with it with just awareness? Is that big that you suggest?
Not much. The field of awareness is completely open. It's an open dimension of being. If you walk out in the woods, you see trees. You might see a squirrel. If you're in a room full of people, you'll see things arise and fall, arise and fall. And if you're really clear, you'll know when you should move towards something, when you should move away, or when you should not particularly be concerned with it. Go ahead.
Did I understand you correctly that that's the only way to deal with the concept of saving all beings?
Oh, I don't know about that. Probably other ways.
Did you say that the way to work with that concept is through awareness?
Yes. Yeah, I would say aware. Aware is, like I said earlier, where that appears is not an experience, but that appearance is experiential. And what we tend to do is we tend to identify with what appears in the mind. I like it, I don't like it. I'm afraid, I'm not afraid. I'm nervous, I'm panicky, I'm me and my enlightenment, me and my clarity, vast clarity. See deeply into reality. Want me to say that in French?
Yeah.
No. Not gonna. I can't speak French. It's all Greek to me. But what we do, I'm mocking there, but we do tend to get in some kind of an interior plateau about understanding, because we do not want to be just in open space with no agenda about anything. This path leads to a cliff. If you follow it, you can also hang back and sit on a park bench, or you can go in circles, or you can go up the mountain and then go sideways, around and around and around and around. And you could even move. You've heard of moo, right? M-U. Yes, sir.
I have a friend who's, to be honest, aggravating. We talk with her, and I see anger coming up in me, and I have that awareness.
Get away from her. She's a friend.
Well, anyway, my question is, though, is there anything we can do to help the other person become aware of what is going on?
The best thing, I'm just kind of creating this in my mind, what you're talking about, is if she is a friend, and if you're someone that you hang out, drink coffee with, or something like that, you see every now and then, just use your senses. Just don't forget gravity. Don't forget how your clothes feel. Don't forget the color of her blouse or shoes, or her hair, or the shape of her hair. Don't forget any of that. Don't leave anything out. Use all the sense fields. If you're completely there with all the sense fields, your thinking process is, it's not necessarily at the back of the bus, but it's also not in the driver's seat. You can just be here and you can just look, you can actually enjoy her. I mean, maybe her voice might be raspy, so that might not be too good, but don't get hooked on the content of what she's saying because she is. Be with all things. You have to actually be with her. You can't be with what she's saying. That's like seeing a lion and jumping in its mouth or sticking your hand in. Of course, it's not like that, but it's that kind of a thing. Out of our desire to want to be helpful, we misunderstand compassion. We misunderstand what that is, and we try to do it out of our separation. I'm here and I'm okay. She's mixed up. I need to help her. Don't do it, because the fundamental nature of this reality we're talking about is not separate. So you will end up being what do they call it when somebody sacrifices themselves? It's martyr-like. It's really an extreme form of theism, of really thinking there's intense separation of good and evil. I'm not saying there isn't good and evil, but those concepts. I'm not saying there isn't that, but to cling to those concepts is just painful, because we create more spinning and everything. So the very best, and this is kind of going overboard a little bit with advice for you, Richard, but I would say hold your seat, sit there, look at her, change your body line. You want to do something? Move from this position to this position. Go like this. Go like this. You'd be amazed at how interconnected everything is, including her. Watch if she's moving, if she's going like this, watch her hands. Don't do it so much that it makes her self-conscious, but watch. There's so much awareness happening there, not information. I'm not talking about somebody goes like this, it means they're closed off. We're not trying to analyze, but stay with. More?
No, what you just said is, I don't know if I personally have the faith that just being there, responding kind of minimally, that's going to make any difference.
The issue there is the concept of minimalist. You actually believe that you have control over things, and I'm telling you, you don't. You have some, but you don't. And you have, and this is not a compliment, but you have a kind of softness about you that all you have to do is be with someone. Just your presence is enough. You don't have to think things out for them. You don't have to figure anything out. Stop it. Just be there. Just sit there. He probably really likes you. You're probably one of the few people that actually will listen to her. Yeah. So do that. Help her. Yes.
So if one's present and someone's rambling on, and you're just being present with everything, and you're not paying attention to the words that are going on.
I'm not saying you should disregard. I'm not saying you shouldn't pay attention to them. I'm saying you need to listen to the words, but don't necessarily get hooked on the meaning of them. You need to hear the meaning. I don't like this. I can't stand it. My husband keeps doing this, and my mother, my father, my dog. Probably not going to be a dog. Nobody complains about their dogs.
So,
the dogs complain about their owners. I talk to them all the time.
So with awareness, you're saying you can do both. I have a tendency. I'm really listening.
Yeah.
I can't see.
Yeah, you can do both.
Yeah.
You don't look for a validation of it. Just stay in your senses. Stay here. You're not going to get a validation. Ego, self-centeredness does not like this. It wants to know if it's doing things right or not.
You know, what I'm saying is I have a belief, obviously, that I can't really listen.
You have a belief that you can't listen.
Well, I mean, and be really aware of the hair and the body and everything.
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of like the words, there's the focus, is the words, and then I get all,
What's your question?
I get all warm up. Is it possible to do both?
Yeah, they're actually the same thing.
So if she asked her a real specific question, I would have some response for her.
Yeah, but it will happen. I mean, she might have to say, "Did you hear what I said?" And you could say, "No." You say, "No." Would you repeat that? There's a lot more space there than we're constantly ignoring this incredibly spacious world we live in. One of the ways we ignore it is we pollute it like crazy. Corporate, ignorance, mostly. But we also, please,
I know you want a question. So my question is, so if question is, I can be really present with a conversation and
yes.
also be present with everything else. And I guess the statement I want to make is I didn't know that about me. I thought I just had to really concentrate on the words so that I was totally present with what they were saying.
No, that's a misunderstanding. Presence is all the senses. And if you're doing that, self-centeredness, ego is not like that. So you could feel has to be a willingness to be nervous and to be out of control at the same time. Put the other person's welfare ahead of your own. Not easy. Yes, sir.
Back to saving all beings again. Is that just a bad translation? Because it seems like, in a relative way, that feeds the ego. Yeah, I want to save all beings. But when you explain what it actually means, it doesn't sound like that's really what you're doing.
Well, the way that I like to use, which is not my translation, but is to be with all things, starting with your own thought patterns. But you can also say that every thought you have is like a sentient being. It's something that came out of nowhere, appeared for a short time, and goes away. Don't do anything with it. If you can actually not be for or against or ignore your own thought patterns, this is how compassion begins to occur. Compassion doesn't belong to anyone. There's no one behind it. If you're actually compassionate, you probably won't really know it. So,
when you take that vow, is that explained to the person taking the vow so they understand?
I understand what you're saying. I would say that people have different kind of understanding. One of the things I do is stop people from taking it. No, you're not ready to do that, or go think about it a while. Or I might just say, what's the first grave precept? And they'll say, I can't remember what that was. So they haven't even looked at them. Or what is, which part of the precepts is the Bodhisattva vow? So people haven't even contemplated it sometimes. And then even if they do know all of that, I might still say, no, send them away. I don't know why. I don't really think about it too much. I wait until somebody pretty much insists they're ready and said they're absolutely ready to do this. But the teachings are all over the place about saving all beings or being with all things. And it's not something to try to get people to do. You shouldn't really do this unless you're ready. You may need to just meditate. I think everyone should meditate. I try to convince people of that if they come to me. But I'm not going to say that they have to become ordained. Yes.
Back to your statement, put others' welfare ahead of your own.
Yes.
That seems like that's the potential pit for martyrdom.
Yeah. Don't do it.
Don't put others' welfare ahead of your own.
Not until you understand what that means. Don't do it out of some kind of separation,
Something personal. Don't do it for personal reasons.
Well, I'm saying we tend to get confused about we're doing okay, but the other person's really having. Don't say right. Don't apologize. It's just a pain in the butt. Have somebody always criticizing it.
I understand.
Do you?
A little bit better.
Good. Anybody else want to get picked on? So, yes.
Back to Richard's question.
Yes. It's a good question.
Yeah, and I think he said it didn't make any difference. He tried something different, but it didn't make any difference. I can't remember exactly the words, but my question has to do with our expectations. If there's nothing to fix, what do we do with expectations that someone's going to change their behavior?
it seems to be very important if you're working in the situation. I have an idea about what kind of things you're talking about, and I'm saying that it seems to be very necessary to meet things where they are in the midst of someone working with something in such a way that it looks like they're going to actually change their behavior, and they go along and everything seems to be going pretty good, and all of a sudden they just go, back into the flames. You go back into the passion, aggression, ignorance, and all. You can watch the way your own presumptions are, like they shouldn't have. I didn't do enough for them. And those things are situations to be aware of, not to accept. And so it gets doubled up. We get a lot of double things happen. So we're there, and then you don't know you have an expectation until somebody just goes the other way. And then you realize, I really expected that they were going to never drink again, if that's what the kind of thing you're talking about. You just have to be with the person. You have to be very kind. It's really hard if you're doing everything you can for somebody. You've helped them all you can, and they just steal your money, run off and buy heroin. We just have to, just have to be with that and realize that we did what we could, but we don't know all of the causes and conditions that lead up to someone being terribly confused and spinning in some kind of circle that comes into our purview for a while, and they ask for our help, and it looks genuine, and we do the very best that we can, and they seem to be doing very well, and then the winds of karma come and go whoosh. So everything is a teaching, and that's a teaching for you, teaching for me, it's a teaching for people anywhere. It's like having somebody that you really help, and they suddenly go back into whatever drugs or. Yes.
So if we know a difficult person and we say to ourselves, it's too much, I'm just not going to deal with this person anymore, then we're violating our vow to be with all people.
Nope. No, being with them to actually be with them, you're a being too. You have to be with whatever thoughts come up. You can't, if you think there's a fork in the road, you are incorrect. Don't go there. There's no, this path, this spiritual path is completely choiceless. If you enter this path and you begin to function on this path out of awareness, which will happen if you do enough of it, you have to do a lot, you'll start to see that you just do what is the next thing to do. And one of the next things to do, which you won't get a credential for, is saying, I can't meet with you tomorrow. Might be that simple. Might be nothing in there like a scolding. I can't. Well, when can you meet with me? Well, I'm not sure yet. I mean, when I'm saying you could say, well, maybe you're putting them off. You just have to work where it's at. I have lots of people that I talk to, and if I had to think about this stuff, I'd need a full-time psychiatrist. I don't think about anything particularly. If I do think about something, it's usually something I'm afraid of. Some kind of fear comes up for me. But I don't do anything with it. I just watch it, and I watch it just like I did when I was 5 years old. Fear would come up. Then I would do something about it. I don't do anything anymore about it. I don't know why. More?
Well, it's just the basic thing is that why take any vows if every situation is determined by all these previous causes?
Don't take them. Don't ask for vows. If that's how it looks to you, don't do it. You're not ready to do that.
Why would anybody take vows?
It's none of your business.
What?
None of your business. It's very personal. It's none of my business. If somebody comes and says, I want to do this, I want to do this. No, you don't. Don't go away. Don't talk to me about it. Go think about it. And then they go away and they come back. No, I really want to do this. And they might do this several times. Or they might do it once, and I know completely that that's what they need to do, and I have no doubt about it. And it's not something I analyze. I just know it. I don't know where it comes from. And another person I might turn down and turn down and turn down. And then finally I say, just out of kind of getting tired of saying no, I think, well, we'll give it a shot. I don't say that. Let's give it a shot. And then the last one that was that kind of situation, as soon as I said, they just wanted me to say yes. They wanted to see if they could get me to say yes. I don't know if they know this, but they never They never took a single stitch, I don't think, did they? Yeah. Just completely stopped. Was actually kind of irritated by the whole thing. When you came in and said, so do you want to, he kind of said, no. So it's like, so he really wasn't ready. So it runs its own engine. It really does. He really wasn't ready. You know, he really has a lot of, his karma was such that it's very confusing. It would be very difficult to be that gentleman. It's because his circularity was so intense, mixed up with drugs and stuff. So I would say to you, the way you're thinking about it, I wouldn't. You shouldn't do that. Don't do that. You can contemplate it. You could reflect on it. You could see what it means. But someone who asks, it's mutual. We do that together. I talk and we look at it, and the person, if the person really says, no, I've thought about this. I need this. I look at this as glue. I think it's a good way to say, if you do this, there's no reverse here. I'm inspired by the vow to observe the vow to save all beings. Or to be with all things. I'm really inspired by that. And I need this. I need to do this. Then I'll give you jukai. I mean, then you would have to go through the process of sowing, which gets very frustrating. And sometimes in the middle of sowing, you think, what in the hell am I doing? That may be what happened to our friend there that stopped. He might have just, I didn't really want to do this. I just wanted to manipulate Sokuzan. He succeeded. So I wasn't going to fight with him forever. I don't know what his karma is. It's personal. So I help people by keeping them from it, for as long as I can, or as long as it seems like they're unsure. But eventually people come and say no, and they're very convincing. No, I'm ready. I really want to do this. I've had people say that I also know they're not ready. So therefore, we don't do that.
I wasn't thinking so much of formally taking vows and sowing the requisite that any practitioner of the Dharma, every time we do a service, there are those 4 vows. And
so you're pretty much.
Is that one about being with all beings?
Yeah, that's the Bodhisattva vow.
How does that change our behavior? I mean, or does it? You're saying
it may or may not. There isn't anyone. The relative truth is it looks like there's someone. The ultimate truth is there are no separate beings anywhere. The degree to which you think that you can succeed or fail is the degree to which you believe there's a solid self called ego. There's nothing here to die. Only the body dies. Who you are can't be destroyed. And it's not a belief.
So those vows have to do with relative.
Did you hear me?
Well, this question bubbled up.
Okay, well, let's go with the bubble. Go ahead.
So those vows operate at the relative level, not the absolute.
Both levels. Not two. Anything you find one thing over here, if you look, you'll see its opposite, and you'll see that those are not two. Good and evil, not two. If you think they are, you'll fight and you'll go to war and you'll try to eliminate the bad guys. Yes, Senju.
What is the vow to be with all things when self and other are seen through?
There isn't any vow. The vow is about the path of the wisdom path of going towards and trying to understand, trying to be a wise person, try to live in harmony with yourself and with others, with a sense of just being present, kindness, love. More. It goes away because you're no longer separate from anyone. So then whether you like somebody or dislike somebody, it doesn't matter because you're not separate from them anymore. Pretty crazy, huh? Yes.
You see someone eating a lot of popsicles, and that's you feel like they shouldn't, but you would say don't meddle with that. But if we're not separate, so I'm the person that eats a lot of popsicles.
Yeah.
but I want to be a person that doesn't eat popsicles.
Yes.
What should I do with that being that's eating popsicles?
Listen to what I say and do what you're told.
He's saying alcoholic is always an alcoholic.
Yes.
Well, the popsicle is still going to be there.
So?
But why do I get to meddle with myself, but I can't meddle with somebody else, but we're not separate?
Yeah, that's too circular.
Why should I meddle with myself?
I didn't say you're meddling with yourself. I said don't eat popsicles.
But, and this was my practice, was to see what happens when I eat popsicles and either go for them or put them away or ignore the popsicle.
No, we've been doing that for a while.
But yeah, exactly. It
It's
wasn't
time to
working.
stop
It's time to
eating
stop.
popsicles.
But then there's not meddling though.
No.
It feels like it.
Not if I say so. Keep coming.
I really like popsicles.
I do too. I do too. I'm not trying to do away with the desire. I'm saying let's work with it in a way, set up a situation. It's like some people don't want to meditate, and so it's hard to get to the cushion. The downside is it's very hard to get to the cushion. The upside is it's very hard to get to the cushion. And why? It's probably because it's actually looking right at your ego, self-centered mind. Hold still and look. Oh, I don't like this. Well, we don't want to, we don't want to expose ourselves. We don't want to have the eye of prajna or your wisdom eye start to turn around. Tired of looking at the wall, so let's look somewhere else. Let's have a daydream. That'd be good. Let's build a storage building. That'll work. Lumber, tools, hammers. Let's draw a map in our mind. Entertainment of some kind. But to take that clarity and turn it around and try to find a self. And if you're doing the popsicle thing or drugs, you're doing some kind of drug, a little bit is not bad. We talked about that. A little bit isn't a little bit, but not that much. And it's easier just not to do it at all, because if you do a little bit, then you want a little more. It's like me with cookies. You can have one cookie. You better hide the rest of them. I'm going after them.
So what do you do with that then?
Do what?
Well, a little bit isn't really an option. It's like for me, I feel the flipping switch.
It's called awareness. Then you need to decide. I can help you some, but even though we're playing around and we're both having a little fun with this, I can't really make you do anything. But you're functioning as a student of mine, so I have to look. Anytime I talk to anybody, I'm pretty clear on who I'm talking to. I'm not saying I read minds. I don't do that, but I can see your neurosis, because I don't just look with my mind, with my thought patterns. I look with everything. When I'm looking at you, I'm seeing every movement in here. That doesn't mean I'm really aware. You better not pick your nose. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the awareness is all over the place. It doesn't belong to anybody. And if you're nobody, then the awareness is all yours. Wisdom doesn't belong to anybody. You may function like a certain person in a car, driving along, having a flat tire, getting out and swearing at the tire, or upset, or maybe your phone's dead. Or, you may still go through all that. So it isn't like that you're not functioning like that. You're some kind of ultimate being, but your awareness is everywhere. And so when I look at you, I say, stop doing that, or cut back on it. Not meddling. We're just you give me permission to help you, and this is what I'm telling you.
So
did you hear what I said?
I did, sir.
What did I say? Paraphrase.
You said, I can't really tell you just to do it, but you're functioning as my student, so fucking do it.
I didn't say.
Oh, sorry. Do it. Or,
I didn't swear.
I don't know what you said. Sorry.
I'm very careful not to swear.
Yes, you are. Sir,
Casey's here.
I got just one more follow-up question.
One more, and that's
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Habit energy. My habit energy is to eat popsicles, but just because I stopped eating popsicles, that habit energy is still there.
It is.
So how am I going to transcend that just by
You don't
going
have to
back?
transcend it. You don't have to just watch what happens. Just watch what moves. But pull some things out of the way and plug other things back in. I mean, actually play around with your whole awareness situation a little bit from the point of view of moving things around. You know, and change your practice schedule. And you know, some of what we can't, because it's personal stuff, I can't really do a lot of work with that right here. But you know what I'm talking about, I think. It's challenging. Yes.
How do
Julie.
you regret?
Regret? Regret is kind of a filler for awareness. So, you know, if it would something like regretting not investing in McDonald's in 1962, you know, I really regret that. I had so much more money, that kind of thing. But then there's the other layers of it, emotional kind of things that happens. Can you be more specific about it? Is that something really emotional and personal?
Not necessarily, but while I was sitting and thought about something that I regretted not doing.
Okay.
So in this concept of like reality and you know how that
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what your
Okay, I can respond.
opinion on
Okay.
regret.
So I don't really function out of opinions. Probably looks like it, but it's not exactly an opinion. Opinion is, this is what opinion looks like. All investigation stops. But if you operate out of awareness, you're ready to change directions. Reality changes. If gravity disappears, I'm going to be the first one to grab onto a tree. I'm not going to say, this can't be happening. This doesn't work. Give me a tree limb. So as far as regret, I would say bring a lot of awareness to that and see what the motivation behind it. Motivation behind that is about your self-centeredness, not wanting to be wrong and not wanting to make a mistake, and going in with regret, with some kind of an assumption. It would be your description if it's not mine. But some kind of description around that reinforces a self who could have, who would, if they'd done things right, wouldn't have to regret. So it boils down to, it comes down to some kind of a right and wrong thing, that you think that you can make correct decisions and never make any mistakes. Is that helpful?
Yeah,
Okay. Anything further on that? That's a good question.
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Jill.
You mentioned the dark night of the soul a couple times in the past.
Yeah.
Can you explain that again?
So that's who was it that
St. John of the Cross.
St. John of the Cross. So it's just a Western way of talking about people are going through different kind of passages and different trajectories. It's like someone's going fine, everything is good. You have a good job. Your family's happy. You're happy, and then for some unknown reason or something, you start to go down. You maybe go into some kind of depression. Who's that famous author who wrote a book, a really well-known author? I can't remember the name of this book, but it was about his particular passage that went way down into really deep, dark. You remember? Huh? Who's the author?
Richard Freeman.
No, it wasn't that one. There's another pretty well-known, I think, a novelist. But anyway,
Palmer.
was that who it was? Yeah.
The educator. That's who you're talking
Yeah.
about. Palmer, the educator.
Yeah.
That might have been. But anyway, just using, it's like sometimes the causes and conditions that arise, it's very difficult to see why one person is born, with incredible musical ability and just can immediately start to sing. Some children they take a few violin lessons and all of a sudden they just bloom into a violinist. By the time they're 12 or 13, they're at Carnegie Hall. And they get credit for that. People think, oh, you're so great what you do, but there's nobody to get credit for that. There isn't anyone. The person who just got shot in Minneapolis gets as much credit for that music. The causes and conditions are completely unfindable, and so therefore, when the dark night of the soul or really difficult passage happens, one of the practices that you can do as a bodhisattva or as an enlightening being, someone who is on the path to becoming a Buddha, one of the things you can do is say to yourself, well, one of the practices is say, thank you very much, I have no complaints whatsoever. That's an actual practice. You actually say, no matter how negative you feel, you actually just go into that so you have some way of working with it that isn't warfare. Because quite often the warfare with some kind of dark night of the soul or some kind of passage that's just rough and raw and terrifying, really, really difficult, and feels so ragged and so undeserved. This is the part of ego, the self-centeredness that feels like this shouldn't be happening to me. I've done so well. I meditate. I'm kind to people. Start drawing credentials for all the reasons why this shouldn't be happening, instead of the realization that nothing is separate, and you are in a position to actually experience that negativity in its most immediate and raw form as direct perception. Just the direct perception of that without a story, without any credential behind it, without any reason behind it. And so it's seen as something really horrible or bad, that it also, as a practitioner, you could see it as an opportunity. You could say back to me, or anyone could say, yeah, well, I'd like to see you do this. I have an idea what this is about. I couldn't sit up here and teach people or talk to people about this if I hadn't had some kind of experience with it. And I would say, just do it anyway. Just when that comes up, it's not about accepting it. I don't teach by saying just accept. That's very, very disrespectful to someone to just tell them something that you're not going to have to do in that particular 8.5 minutes. That you're telling, well, just accept it. Just be with, like someone who's dying. We'll just go with the flow. You might want to say, if you have some kind of interaction with a person, you're about to die. This is natural. There's nothing wrong with dying. And encourage them to go in with their consciousness into this. This is your opportunity to actually have a conscious death. It's your opportunity to actually have a conscious depression, not a depression that's covered up with a bunch of drugs. And don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that you shouldn't talk to your therapist, your psychiatrist, or your whomever, and decide that you may need to. But that should be between you and them, and you should be active in that. You shouldn't just necessarily, because you're having that kind of feeling, just say, let somebody else take all of your autonomy away from you, and try to put a bunch of manhole covers on top of your leaky subterranean muskrats. So a specific question, Jill, about that would be good.
Is that resistance that you feel when you're working with a negative emotion required for there to be a breakthrough?
Yeah, that's actually compassion. Yeah.
That's where you lay down your sword.
You might. You might. The sword might vanish. It might not be a gesture of laying out. Just that you're no longer. There's nothing to sharpen.
Is there a part of the meditator's path in which they feel overwhelmed by how much negativity is in their mind?
If you're on the path of meditation, you're probably going to run into that. It's not a guarantee, but some form of that is probably going to happen with you. And it's your opportunity, as I said, to just don't accept it, don't reject it, don't look away. It's just like a cloud. You see it, but you don't accept it. You don't reject it. You don't look away from it. If that's where all of your senses are oriented towards that, very difficult to do.
Would you say in general we're pretty cloudy people?
Yeah.
Pretty opaque at times?
Yes. Okay. In general, and in particular. Yeah. There's lots of clouds going on. But as a meditation teacher, I can't necessarily go in and, do surgery on somebody or have a cloud removing chemical. How's that funny?
I like it. That's a great idea.
Cloud removing chemical. That'd be the title of my next book. So, in other words, we can't, but what someone can do is to, if there's permission and if there's a connection to help you and encourage you to not run away and not to run into it, which you mean explaining it, and justifying it, and not to cover it up with anything, and not to do anything with it, but just be there. Because you're actually looking at your Buddha nature. The Buddha, when he awoke, and I wasn't there, at least this wasn't there, when he awoke, he did not awaken to fields of unicorns and fluffy clouds and pink mice, as far as I know. What did the Buddha awaken to? A couple of things. He woke to suffering. Everything is intensely suffering everywhere, and it is dependently arisen. That there's not a single situation that is separate from everything else. It's all not separate. Yes.
So I often hear being in it, but not of it. So being in life, living in the reality, the relative, but choosing to be in the functional truth instead of getting stuck in the samsara.
What's your question?
Is that accurate?
No.
Okay.
I just want to know how it's not accurate.
Yeah.
Because you can't choose. You don't say right. I'm into pointing out right today. And when I say that, I don't mean to dismiss what you're saying. There's something to what you're saying. It's very, very conceptual. And our conceptual understanding, quite often, especially if it's pretty clear and kind of somewhat fairly accurate, according to John Kabat-Zinn or someone, then we hang on to that. And we use that in place of our of awareness. And so when something negative comes, we lecture ourselves with that. Nothing is separate. Nothing is, we badger ourselves with those concepts. A little bit is good. A little bit of that, just like, thank you very much. I had no complaints whatsoever. That's difficult to say that in the middle of intense distress. So a little bit is okay, but the fundamental seeing that needs to happen, it's not even it's not even an occurrence like, oh, first I was this way and now I'm that way. It's not even some kind of thing that occurs. It's difficult to talk about it relatively. Yes.
How can we not believe in our thoughts but still trust ourselves?
Do you believe your thoughts?
I have a hard time not believing my thoughts.
Okay.
But you told me not to.
Well, I'm just encouraging you to not necessarily make your thought patterns some kind of validation of what's going on. So we can't help, when I say don't believe your thoughts, can't help but get attached to things that are happening. Also, don't disbelieve. Don't believe them. This is true. Don't disbelieve them. That's not true. To do that is to create a kind of tension that's happening that just fills up the space with a bunch of, weaponry. Go ahead.
Should I trust myself?
Yeah.
Think about that for a minute.
You better. So, I thought there wasn't any self to trust.
Oh, good question. I should have asked that.
Somebody else could ask it. I don't know if they handle that one. You should ask any question, the harder the better. If you think you've got a question that will stop me in my tracks, that would be a complete pleasure to be stopped. Go ahead.
What is it that trusts?
nothing trusts. That's why it's so trustworthy. If it's conditional, if it's causes and conditions, if it's relative truth, then it's not trustworthy. But if it's just the complete open dimension of being without a separate self anywhere, then it's trust.
Doesn't that make everything suspect then?
Yeah, that's the bad part.
What was that? I didn't hear that.
So doesn't that make everything suspect?
That's what I say. Don't believe anything. I mean, question everything. Brittany.
Well, when you can't figure out an answer and it just is confusing.
That's good. Confusion is good. Just stay in the confusion. Let things be confusing. Because if you try to go in out of your discontent, try to push that confusion into some kind of success or some kind of no confusion, then you're meddling around with something you haven't really investigated. It'd be like someone, not like it, but this is an image, like someone going in to a crime scene and instead of really seeing what it is, going in and immediately jumping to conclusions about it, which makes it more confusing. It's probably not a very good example, but it's like trying to do something, fiddle with something that you haven't really sat back and looked at for a while. This is why it's important to actually understand. We have the difficulty with a preconception is you think that your insight and your perception is actually true. And it creates separation. I'm over here, you're over there. The fundamental nature is there's no one here and there's no one out there. Although to someone who sees that, it looks like someone's out there. I'm not making myself all that clear, so you guys should be asking questions. You guys.
Can I make a question? We'll just be one with the confusion.
What?
Well, you sort of said, if you're confused, then don't try to resolve it, or whatever the way I understand it is, just be confused.
No, don't do that either. Because then be confused means that you're actually accepting the confusion. You're actually identifying your kids. You're kind of like, oh, okay, I give up. I'll just be confused. Don't do that. I didn't say that. Do as I say. Don't do anything. And this, this is what you're doing when you're meditating. You are actually practicing doing nothing. Wu Wei. The Wu Wei is a Chinese for what?
Not like water.
Yeah, it's close. That's Mizu no Kokoro. It's Japanese. Well, they're similar languages. It's just a complete open dimension, not just an open way.
So
Yes.
Is this confusion thing, is that something we've invented? I'm confused, and you're saying, why name it? Is that what
I didn't say why name it.
Well, that's sort of my question is.
What is your
As
question?
soon as you name the state of confusion, then you've gone the wrong way. That isn't a question, but there's
It's a
always an
statement.
implied question like, isn't that so?
No. Not so. Questions, please. Joy, you have a question? I know. Joy is such a know-it-all. Question? Let's see, I'll pick on the therapist here. He's not a therapist, but he might as well be.
But you had mentioned that sit down and do nothing.
Yes.
But when I sit down and face the wall, I'm watching the whole universe being created. So how is that doing nothing?
Well, it's not.
Well, how can I do nothing?
Sit down, face the wall.
I face everything happening. Like nothing is doing nothing.
Sit more. It takes a lot. I hate to tell you guys this. This is just, but even if you sit a lot, it's still going to be difficult. But it seems to take a lot of sitting down, holding still, watching the mind, eyes open. It takes a lot of it.
Is it nothing a projection?
What?
A reference point? To do nothing. Is that a reference point?
Yeah.
So what should I do with that reference point?
Don't do anything with it.
He's told me to do it.
I told you to sit.
He said do nothing. Sit and do
This
nothing.
is the way you do. You sit down, cross your legs, put your hands in the cosmic mudra. Sit, look at the curtain, look at the wall, and insofar as you can, don't do anything. Just you're doing something by observing, but you can't hardly help that. All the sense fields are open, eyes are open. You see a wall, you hear a bird outside. There's some kind of movement happens, but it happens because body, speech, mind, consciousness are not separate. It just looks like it. It looks like things are all separate, but if you sit down, there's one situation that is receiving. It's doing it through Shadayatana, the six sense fields. Just receiving, just receiving. Just watch that. Just observe that. Do a lot of it. Wanda.
So you were saying question everything. And tying that into the not separate. So who or what is questioning?
Yeah, there's different, when we question, you could say, well, that's ego, but we have to separate things out to see the way in which we have to actually examine things. That's why they have the concept of the five skandhas: form, feeling, perception, concept, consciousness is what makes up ego. Those are just 3 or 5 ways of breaking it down into parts. And so that all gets together: form, feeling, perception, concept or naming or language and all that, and the six sense fields. All the six sense fields all coming together make up what appears to be a living separate being. And then that living separate being, based on passion, aggression, and ignorance, wanders through the 6 realms unless it runs into a Buddha. If it runs into the Buddha, it runs into the teachings on some level, and then that whole thing starts to become very suspicious and questionable. All those realms, all that passion, aggression, ignorance, all that suffering. So something or something, actually, it looks like somebody or something is looking at that, but eventually, if you do it long enough, eventually just wisdom sees wisdom. Wisdom, there isn't anything for wisdom to see, but just wisdom. It sees itself. It's not separate from everything. It's called awakening, realization. Until that time, depending on the person, it might look like I'm looking for it, or I'm looking at it, or it's me, or I'm doing better. I'm not doing, this person's doing better than I am, or I'm doing a lot of evaluating going on. You don't have to stop any of that. You don't even have to stop going to war. Just bring a lot of awareness to it. And if you try to stop the war, that's more warfare. But if you can bring a lot of awareness to it, then to use that same image, you can see where the artillery is getting its ammunition from. And you can do something that is much more gentle. You can snip those lines. You can go back and see how, and that might be no more than just not raising your voice. Yes.
How would you explain to someone who's never heard the word awareness, what bringing awareness to it means?
There's a lot of dependent, be a child or.
You just said bring awareness to it. So
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, you asked something about somebody who's never heard about that. Are you talking about a child or an adult?
I mean,
Huh?
just not like the definition of what awareness means. Like what is?
Okay, so I use the example, that's a sound, and then it arises in awareness. And then we immediately add something to it. He clapped his hands. It was, we bring up things to add to it as a commentary on it. And just awareness alone, if you're sitting on a cushion, then we're just prioritizing the awareness and having the awareness be primary. We're not getting rid of the thinking. The thinking is usually out in front, making sure we're not getting in trouble, making sure we look good, making sure that we're not doing something that somebody's going to disapprove of, or for that matter, something we're not going to like. And so we're thinking, analyzing, looking at rules and laws, looking at precepts for that matter.
Are you really bringing it to it, or is it already there?
Yeah, it's
and
already
letting the other stuff fall away?
Yeah, kind of. Sit a lot. Yes, sir.
Isn't that where you use the metaphor of the sky?
Yeah.
That awareness is.
Yeah, the awareness is already there. It's like a blue sky. Who you actually are is, if it's like anything, it's like a blue sky, which if you look really, really close, it isn't even blue. It's just not there in the sense that this is here or our bodies are here. We're so in love with this situation. Grasp at it. More? That was good. Awareness is the space in which things occur. Sound, smells, taste. There needs to be some kind of consciousness happening there. Just like when we go we go to sleep and we go into a dream state, the whole thing plays out again. There's people who have passed on are there having supper with us, and and we're the whole thing, and we're there, and we really think, even though looking back on it, it's not all that filled up with anything substantial, since we don't have a reference point of this, we think it's real, and we're in that dream, and then we wake up, and then we're back in this dream. That's why in the Tibetan tradition they say the dream you have at night is the sample dream. It shows you what a dream is, and this is the real dream. This is the actual unreality. Yes.
When we sit and have that almost kind of a dreamlike association of
yes.
a jumble of things,
yes,
is that ignorance?
What do you think?
I suspect that it is. I suspect that it's a cover.
I'll go with it. No question. Goes on.
Earlier you said that which sees is not an experience.
Mm-hmm.
What is an experience?
What's being seen. What's being seen, what's being heard is an experience. We hear a bird. We experience people. We see different colors. So those are coming in through the sense fields.
So how can we truly know ourselves if life seems to be experiential?
So, as I've said many times, sit down and watch what moves. Eventually the awareness, watching what moves, sound, smells, taste, touch, eventually, without being even instructed, the awareness goes and doesn't find anyone. You can't find a solid being there. It's an astonishing situation. That's just the first part. Then you look out here and you don't find anybody out there either. Everybody's in the same kayak. Only it's upside down. Uh-oh. More?
What's upside down?
It's the kayak faces down. All the people are hanging out into the water. That's how it's upside down. So,
tell us more about this.
It's a way of saying that people's awareness about what is really true is obscured. They can't see the sky. They're upside down in a kayak.
They could fall into the boat.
It's too fancy. I won't let that happen. Yes.
You say also trust the space in which things arise.
I do.
Can you see space?
No. You can see the things in the space. This is something artists are working with in any field of art, visual art, space, figure ground, music, writing, poetry, figure ground. What's the image? What's the shape of the image, and what does the shape of the image do to the shape of the ground? And it's about balance, but not just the concept of balance. It's about balance that if it comes out of your understanding, that's completely unique. It's like no one has eyes like you do. That's the astonishing thing, and this is why the trap is to think there's a real self, because we're so unique. To think there's a real solid separate being somewhere. No, there's no solid being. But who you are is so completely unique. Someone like Picasso is born and it has such, who knows what kind of karma brought about that amazing creative genius. But he just started making artwork when he was a little kid, and his dad just put his brushes away. He was so astonished by his son's ability and talent. He just stopped painting. He was an artist. Gave him his brushes and quit when he was like 11 or 12, Picasso. And he produced, 3 paintings a day for almost a century.
Another question.
Please.
Earlier you said, you responded to a question, you said, children are innocent and adults are wise, maybe some adults.
Did I? I take that back.
All right,
I changed my mind.
then never mind, I don't have a question.
I think you said children are innocent, not wise.
What I was saying, that the children seem wise because some of the things they say are like, it's astonishing that they can say the things they say because they're coming out of a direct perception of what's happening. But they don't have the sophistication, to really see, get the intellect in line with everything else. They don't have that. So as they get older, they start to collect more intellectual paraphernalia to help them fit into society and be accepted by others. It's not that children don't want to be accepted. It's just they're innocent. So especially when they're real little, they have no idea that people are maybe laughing at them. They're innocent. Whereas someone who is wise may appear childlike and may not. It depends on how causes and conditions.
What is acting out of direct perception?
No action at all. Nothing to do. There wouldn't be any action. Unless there was, in which case there would be no actor.
What is perceiving then?
What's perceiving what?
The direct perception.
It's perceiving itself. Wisdom just sees wisdom. I mean, it sounds like kind of a fluffy way of talking about it, but it needs to be brought up so that there's some kind of encouragement or understanding. When you begin to lose your reference points, you don't give up. When you begin to go way out to in the middle of the ocean, you don't give up. You keep going, losing reference points. Eventually, the whole ocean looks round because you have no reference points anymore. You just see water.
So aren't you saying then back to the child that there's sort of a difference between pure perception and selective perception?
What's the question?
Is there a difference between pure perception and selective perception?
Yeah.
Are we discussing the difference?
Direct perception is what I'm saying.
What a child can do is sort of direct perception, and what we do as we become more enculturated becomes more and more selective perception.
That's too fancy.
Well,
makes sense, but it's a trap.
Awareness is like pure perception.
It's a trap. I know where you're going. You have a really good understanding of it, something you've looked at and studied for a while. So I can see that, but circular. Watch the circle. If you don't see the circle, you won't be able to step off the tilt-a-whirl. You'll just go around and around. You'll just go from one little part of the tilt-a-whirl to the next, trying to be happy, trying to squeeze happiness out of some sorrow. Does everyone have back trouble? I like that. Yep, we do. So we have any other questions? Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.